So again, good evening and good morning, everybody. Today, a lecture about tools and their application and use in dog training, whether we should use tools or not, and if we do, what kind of impact does that have, and how could we benefit from using tools, and how could we kind of sabotage our training by using improper tools or using tools improperly. So many people, since I would say the start of time when the domestication of dogs really took off, we always trained dogs with tools. We had swords and we had bats and we had big chains, and we were containing the animals. We put them in cages, and the cages allowed the animal to stay contained, and then realized that the human had a little bit of power over it, and if they would do anything stupid to the human, they would be beaten by chains and hammers and eventually stabbed to death. This is like thousands of years ago. We don't do that anymore. However, if we go back to the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, the most common way of training a dog was with a leash and a collar. And what most people used in those was these training collars, these pinch collars. And there's some ancient versions of those made from a leather strap with framing nails, and that's what we used in the past. And then we put that leather collar around their neck, and then if the dog didn't do anything, we just poke a couple holes in their neck. And then two things happened. Either the dog came up the leash and ate your face, or he submitted it. When he came up and ate your face, the dog was killed, because that's not what a normal dog did. And if he submitted, the human felt good, because now he could dominate the dog and says, okay, say, I can control the animal. And we've done that for decades. So the old school thinking about tools was to control the animal. Yeah, everything was about to control. The stakes in the ground with the chain was to control the animal's movement and freedom. The cages, the crates was to control the animal's freedom. The kennels was to control the animal's freedom. The choke change that we used was to control the animal's breathing. And one of the things that we could do is if I can take your breath away, then you probably are going to listen to me. If you do something stupid, and then I take your breath away, and then if you do what I tell you, I'm allowing you to breathe, I probably have your attention. Yeah. So that was the kind of the old school way of thinking about tools. Then like I have trained numerous dogs with a bamboo stick. Like in the beginning, what we did is, you don't do what I tell you, and I'll just whack you on the face a couple times. And I shit you not, whacking somebody or an animal with a little reed or bamboo stick hurts like a motherfucker. Yeah. So two things happened. Either the dog looked at me and I said, what the fuck are you doing? I'm going to eat your stick and you. Or the dog says, yeah, I'm going to sit down. And believe me, both events happened. I had dogs that literally looked at me and came after me, and then whacking them more didn't work. So we put these dogs down, and the dogs that submitted, they were great. They were the good dogs. So we did a lot of stupid stuff in the past, and the tools that we used, again, the mind state that we had about tools is all about control and domination. It wasn't really about education and training. Yeah? Where why do we use a whiteboard? I'm not beating you on the head with the whiteboard. I mean, if I would be a dumb teacher. So I'm not gonna. If I grab your head and smash it on the whiteboard a couple times, I don't think you're gonna learn a lot faster. But we use a whiteboard to explain things. I can draw on it. I can make pictures. I can make writings, and you have a visual reference of what I'm trying to tell you. So the whiteboard is there to enhance learning. Yeah, and I think responsible dog training is all that. It's when we use something, whether it's so simple as a leash, we need to ask ourselves the question is, why do we use it, and how will it enhance our learning? How will it enhance the learning of the dog, and how can we enhance our teaching? And that's a completely different mind state than I'm going to take my dog on a leash and I'm going to control his freedom. Although, yes, this is the outcome of using a leash, is basically, withholding and controlling his freedom. If that is not the mind state and we use the leash as a training tool, then we're going to approach that leash completely different. And that is what I want to talk about today. Is what tools can we use to actually enhance training? And to start with collars, I am not against any type of collar except the choke chain. So I do not like, and I will never support this kind of chain, because I think this is ridicule. But any other collar could be used pretty effectively in dog training if we know what F we are doing. The reason why I don't like choke chains is they are designed to literally choke. And I'm going to get myself a bruise here now. And when we choke the dog, and I don't know if you can see this on the camera, my skin is getting pinched, and I have one point of contact here that actually nips me and hurts me, and I can cut off my blood supply. Let's try it for a couple seconds here. And yeah, my hand is starting to swell up. So if Mary's a nurse, so she could now like draw some blood very easily. You can see the veins are starting to pop out, and it also kind of leaves a mark. So if I put this around my neck and I would do the same thing, I probably am not in a good place. I won't be able to breathe. So taking a dog's airway away and biting the dog at one particular point is very unnatural. So dogs use tools all the time. They use their mouth, they use their teeth, they use their weapons, and those weapons are used to teach and to correct. Yeah, but a bite is very different feeling than this choke. So the dogs do not understand why their air is taken away and then they don't die. So once a predator, bites down on the throat, he has the intent to end life. And then when the animal doesn't die, it's like, oh, holy shit, this is kind of weird. I was ready to give up my life, and now I'm not dead. So this thing absolutely does not make sense to me. Yeah, it's cruel. It bruises the dog's neck, and I can easily break the dog's esophagus with it. If I give this a good yank, I can literally cut the esophagus in a couple pieces, and then yeah, that's the end of my dog. So this is the only color I do not like. A more civilized version of this is a fur saver with bigger links. So if I would put this same thing around my arm and I choke, you can see that there's no choking. There's always this hole. I cannot get this to where my arm is completely, you see that? So this is a very typical collar in sport dog worlds. We call it a fur saver, and the reason why this is a fur saver is the fur can actually stick to the holes, and you don't have that flatness of the fur what show people like. Yeah. So there's two ways you can use it. You can use it in a choke. Some people use it like that. And then other people use it like this, where they attach this ring to one of those loops, and now it's basically a flat collar on a chain because you take away the choking mechanism. So, however, the disadvantage of these collars, if we use them as a corrective measure, if we yank on it, is exactly the same as a choke chain. Yeah, the dog gets a feeling of biting in one particular spot, and the biting is often, if this is my leash, is on the top of the neck, which does not make sense. And I'm also, by pulling this, I will block his airway. So as a huge corrective measure, it does not really work. So the great thing about these collars is that in a show ring, the hair goes up. In a sport dog event, the hair sticks through, and then I still can kind of contain my dogs as a complete training tool. It can be used when I use it as a deadbolt and I give little taps on it, but that's about it. So the other collar that is commonly used is what we call a training collar, a prong collar, a pinch collar, whatever people uses. And then the actual use of this collar is pretty difficult. So this collar consists of basically dull pointed metal prongs that will poke into the dog's skin and neck when we pull on this this little chain here. And the intent of the collar is to emulate a bite. And so the way dogs correct each other is by biting on the side. Yeah, the dogs will, if my mouth is the muzzle, the dogs will start correcting themselves by biting on the side of the neck, and that is how mom and the adults correct the young offspring. So with a collar, one of the things that we want to emulate is that if we pull, that the sides of the prong collar do the biting, not the choke part. So when people use the prong collar and this moves into the dog, then we're biting on the throat, which is a completely false response, because now we're telling the dog, hey, I'm going to kill you. So rather than have a corrective measure, it's like, hey man, just go left and right, I'm tapping you on the shoulder, I'm actually going to bite you and telling you how I kill it. And so the reason why this happens is because people use the prong collar way too loose. So when I use this way too loose, look what happens now. I'm pulling this into the dog. I'm now biting. When I make the collar really tight, you see that the action is more on the side. Yeah. So one of the things that we need to do with this collar is we need to have a really snug fit. I like it right behind the ears, and the reason why is so I can bite the dog on the side. This collar is not meant to yank. This collar is meant to have very subtle bites. We're not here to try to kill the dog. We want to teach the dog that, hey man, you're just going wrong. So this is a very effective collar to use. And I see this as a communication collar, because that's what we do. We're communicating with the dog with a biting action. So the reason why I'm very hesitant in teaching people these types of collars is the misuse of them. People cannot refrain themselves from yanking and cranking on a dog's neck. And so what they eventually doing is, rather than communicating the right thing, rather than teaching, is they're confusing the snot out of the dog, because the dog pulls on the leash and then they yank on the leash and they say, hey, if you pull on the leash, I'm going to kill you. I just walked in front of you. You want to kill me for walking in front of you? That doesn't make sense. It's like when you yawn in my class, I kick your teeth in. It's, it's like, you're a dick, you know? So that will break the trust. So we need to be very careful when we use these tools that we use them properly. And again, when I go back to my intro, it's not the attitude of dominating, it's the attitude of teaching. And teaching, great teaching, is by great communication. So we can't see this as a controlling device. We need to start seeing this tool as a communication device. And then once we have that, once we truly understand that this thing is there to communicate, now I can start learning how to communicate with it. Yeah, it's like learning a foreign language. It's like, okay, I'm marrying this Japanese guy. The only thing I know is sake, yeah, and konnichiwa. Well, that's not going to bring me much. Rather than I'm going to thank him for being drunk, you know. So in order for us to have a really good relationship, is well, and konnichiwa is hello, it's arigato, that is thank you. I don't know. Hope there's no Japanese speakers here. But if we don't study the language, we won't have a good relationship, and that's the same with the dog. And the problem is that all these collars require different communication. This is like speaking Japanese, this is like speaking French, and this is like speaking Arabic. Because all these different collars work a different way. They all give a different sensation. Yeah? You cannot train a dog on a flat collar. It's impossible. Yeah? And the reason why you cannot train a dog on a flat collar, and that's what most people do, yeah, they start yanking on this collar, is when I might need to take my dog out because he's whining. He has a little bit of loose stool. So if I start yanking on this collar, the only thing I do is I put pressure on his throat. Yeah, and if I put pressure on the throat, like a dog, when he pulls into a collar, there's something what we call an oppositional reflex, and the dog cannot do anything but pulling. He cannot stop it. Yeah. So if you go to the doctor and he uses the hammer and you have this like reflex of the knee, hopefully you have one, but you can't stop it. It's like you want to sneeze and it's hard to stop it. You have a yawn, it's hard to stop it. I say stop yawning, but I can't. Well, if you don't stop yawning, I'll punch you in the face. That's kind of weird. So with a collar, it's the same thing. So once a dog starts pulling, let me close this collar here for you guys. And again, this is live, huh? So I fuck up all the time. So when a dog start pulling on this collar and he goes this direction, that pressure on his neck will tell the dog to go into the pressure. So he wants to run away from the pressure. Yeah, that's why, you know, the average 90-year-old turns into a kite when a Saint Bernard is pulling them. Yeah, because they're strong. The dog wants to go, you know, away from the pressure, and it's going to go faster and faster and faster and faster, and eventually, you know, we're skateboarding behind the dog. And the reason why that is because that communication tells the dog, and it is a reflex, it's what we call an oppositional reflex, is you, in order for you to stop having this feeling, you need to run into the feeling. And so that's a very unnatural thing for the dog to do then, to stop and actually back up. It's like, hey, wait a minute. I don't know how to do this. Yeah. And so one of the things that we need to do is when we want to teach the dog to learn on a leash is start without a leash and teach the dog to stay with us first before we put something on him that he can't even control. And that's unfortunately how most people start walking on a leash. It's like, oh, I buy a dog, and the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to put something on his neck that he can't stop pulling. And so when they have no success with a flat collar, they buy a harness. They say, oh yeah, my aunt said that You know, in order to walk a dog on a leash, you need to use a harness. You know, because everybody who's ever owned a dog, everybody who's ever baited a dog, everybody who's ever petted a dog has an opinion about training a dog. So there's so much bullcrap out of there that then we put the harness on, and now what we're going to do is we're going to tell the dog that, hey, you know, you can push in this not just with your neck, but with your entire body. Guess what happens to the oppositional reflex? Gets a little bit stronger. So now the dog says, hey, no, I have the same oppositional reflex. I feel that pressure, but I'm stronger because I'm in a harness. I actually can pull forward, you know. And then what we start doing is yanking and cranking on the dog and punishing it and yelling it and doing all kinds of crazy stuff for something that he cannot control. Again, it's like me punching you in the face for sneezing. You know, it would be stupid. So the problem that many people have is when we have these tools is that they have no idea what the effect is and why they are used. This is used to be pretty and to hang all these nice little tags on. So when you know, your dog runs in it, they can see it's rabies and it belongs to you, you know, and it has insurance, you know, and his name is Fido and all that stuff. And Fido has a cell phone number that you should text when lost, you know. So that is why this is really good. And it's when your dog is properly trained in staying with you, it also complies to the legal requirement to have your dog on a leash and a collar. But it's not a training tool. You know, it's not a training tool. It's awesome to, if you need to secure your dog and to keep your dog out of trouble, that you can snap a little leash on it and then you have him, and then he doesn't run on the street or he doesn't get into shit. He doesn't jump in the river, and it's you can contain him with that, but you can't teach him stuff with this. The same with a harness. You know, why is a harness used? Well, this particular harness is either used for tracking or agitation or, you know, sledding or pulling or skeduring or whatever it is you want to use it for. But the intent is so the dog can pull in it and can be stronger. It's not meant to teach him to walk on a leash. It's not meant to do this. This is designed to teach the dog to pull even harder, you know, and then the incredible, polite, uneducated salesperson in your favorite dog food stores, they'll tell you, "Oh my God, this is the new super duper pink with purple bubble no pull harness." Yeah, it's called a bullshit harness because every harness is designed to be pulled. But then yeah, so then they add all these like fancy little gadgets on it, and the only thing it's going to do is like make the dog and you much stronger. You're going to develop good back muscles, and the dog is going to develop incredible shoulders and hip muscles. Yeah, but I mean, learning to walk on a leash properly is not going to happen, you know. Skiing or skateboarding or mountain biking with an incredible speed is what you can do, because your dog can help you going up a hill very fast because he's able to pull. Yeah. So the same with leashes. You know, just walking on a leash is if I have this handle here. This is what people do, you know, they clip this on the collar and then they hold the leash in the hand. Like, you have no fucking control over this thing whatsoever. Look how long it is. So if you do need to have a correction, people are like yanking and cranking. It's like starting their fucking lawnmower, you know, when they're correcting their dog. It's sort of like their chainsaw. It's like, oh my God, what the hell are you doing? You know, where if
Brenda could do a commercial for you.
yeah, so if we, you know, we need to learn how to use it. And that's where, you know, in my From Tyrant to Teacher video, I always say dog training is both a science and a mechanical skill. If I have no idea how to, you know, how to communicate with a leash and what actually happens on the dog's neck when I give a little bit of pressure or I release it, I give a little of pressure. If I don't understand what the effect is in the communication with any collar that I put on him, then I should keep my hands off this leash. You know, unless you hold it and you just let your dog go anywhere, because this is what it's designed for then. You know, it's got a handle, you put it on a harness, and it's like, yeah, hold on for your dear life, because some magic is going to happen. The dog start pulling, and then at least you can keep your dog with you. Yeah. So the other thing that I could do is I could whack it a couple times. What some people do then they start whacking the dog with the other end of the leash, which, you know, turns to, it's like an instant asshole. It's like this like package that you pour in the water, and it's like instant asshole. Some people do this because they can't control the dog, so they start beating it. This is not what this leash is designed for. Again, what people think this leash is for is just to control and not to teach. Yeah. So when we just think about the collars, the leash, the harnesses, and we understand, you know, what their function is and what they are not designed to do, that gives us an opportunity here to actually start thinking about, you know, why am I putting this on my dog? And what is the intent that, why do I put this on the dog? What is my goal? Well, my goal is that my dog learns to walk next to me. Okay, do you need a collar with that, or do you actually need to teach your dog to learn to walk next to you? The latter, yeah. So when I start training with these collars, the first thing that I just do is like I put this collar on the dog's neck, and he's next to me, and I feed him next to me. It's like here, he sits here, and I feed him next to me. And so this collar is going to mean nothing. And so for a tool, like any collar should mean absolutely nothing in the beginning for the dog, because otherwise he's going to have negative associations to any tool. So the proper use of a tool is whenever we have a tool, whenever we have a collar, is to make it neutral. You know, I talked to this about, you know, the dogs going crazy when you take the leash off, you know, you take your leash off your clothing rack, and then the dog runs to the door because it thinks to go outside. Well, that's already improper use of the leash, because you use the leash to go outside all the time, which now has an association of what? This leash is going to allow me to pull the snot out of my handler. Yeah. So by starting with a leash to make it neutral, I have a good opportunity to use this as a training tool. Yeah. The same thing with all these collars. So whenever you use a tool, we need to first make that tool neutral. We need to you know, like a collar. Step number one is neutral. The tool itself is meaningless. Not great positive associations with it, not great negative associations, but it's something that's on my neck, and I don't do much with it. Yeah. And then when my dog sees this collar and he thinks this is absolutely nothing, now I can actually start associating other stuff with it. You know, every time we have this collar on, I walk in a circle, and then every time I walk in a circle and you stay with me on my left side with your shoulder to my right knee, you get food. Oh, that's cool. So I put this collar on, and then we start walking, and now every time I stay here, I get food. And then what we do is in our training, we start moving opposite directions, and we make turns, and then the dog, you know, is following you, and then you give him food. And he said, hey, every time I have this collar on and this guy moves in a certain direction and I stay with him, I get food. Wow. We just taught the dog to learn to stay next to us. Yeah. Then what I do is, and this is another video, is how to teach a dog to walk on a leash. That's a long video. Is then we're gonna, when the dog is okay to stay with us with a collar on and he doesn't think anything about it, is to put a little pressure on it. And his immediate reaction is to try to go forward. So if I now hold the collar, and I'm not letting him go forward, but he scoots backwards a little bit and then looks at you, I'm going to click and I'm going to feed him. I say, hey, wait a minute. This is interesting. So I'm going to stand on my wall. I have my dog next to me, and I hold the leash tight. And my dog wants to go forward, and he takes a step forward, but he can't step forward. And now he says, oh my God, this bullshit. And he takes a step backwards, and then I feed him. I say, wait a minute. If I feel this pressure and I go backwards, then I get the same thing as if I stay with the handler. So I'm slowly but surely like reconditioning the oppositional reflex. And the reason why I have done that is because I've reinforced to that staying with me is absolutely very strong. And that is how we teach a dog to walk on a leash, just on a wall, and by putting pressure on it. And then when the pressure is constant and the dog keeps pulling, but he doesn't go forward, he's not winning anything, but he takes one step back just because he tried, and that's reinforced. Now we're slowly but surely getting into his brain and teaching him that, hey, whenever you feel this pressure, try to do something very unnatural. And then we can do that with any collar. We can do that with this one. We can do it with that one. And then every time you feel this pressure, you step back. With this one, the pressure is gone and you get food. And I need to do that 1,000 times, because otherwise my dog is not going to get it. But people give up after 100 times because they think like, oh shit, I've done this 100 times. My dog should know by now. No. And then if your dog knows it for one step, that doesn't mean he knows it for 2 steps. And if your dog knows it for 2 steps, that doesn't mean he knows it for 3 steps. Dogs are incredible bad generalizers. So after 10,000 tries, your dog is probably figuring out that, hey, wait a minute, every time I do something unnatural, and I do the opposite, I'm going to be okay. Yeah. So, and then we can be successful. So the same with the bamboo stick, for instance. I love using bamboo sticks in training. I could beat you with it, but I can pet you with it. I can play with it. You can play tug of war, depending on my thick bamboo stick. I can throw it away. You can play fetch with it. Yeah. I could also say, you know, you stay behind this bamboo stick. If I just walk, and that you stay behind a bamboo stick, then I'm going to feed you. If I have 2 bamboo sticks, which I have, then I have 1 bamboo stick on the side, 1 bamboo stick in the front, and if you don't touch the bamboo stick and you don't touch me and you don't touch this bamboo stick, then you get food. It's awesome. You get what you want. Grab food. You see? And I can also say, oh, good boy, David. Stop it. Yeah. So I can use this as like a aversive tool, but I can use it to caress. I can use it as a physical blockage. I can use it as a toy. I can use it with all kinds of stuff. Yeah. But the old school thought is like, oh, I'm going to whack you with it. You know? And
you kind of want to do all those things to maintain neutral.
The stick is neutral, yeah. Exactly. The stick is neutral. In the beginning, the stick is meaningless. You just walk with a stick. You feed backwards. You have a stick in your hand, and you walk and you feed backwards. And the dog's like, what the hell is this for thing? It's like, he's a little shy, and he's going to pay attention to the stick. Stick's not important. And you just feed backwards. And they say, oh, good doggy. So, what the fuck? It's okay. It's just a stick. You desensitize them to the stick. And there you go. Yeah. And so a bamboo stick can be easy. You can show off a little bit. You can hit yourself in the nuts with it. You can do a lot of cool stuff with it. But again, the example, what I want to make is that when people, I see so many trainers use a bamboo stick the wrong way, because they just use it as a aversive tool rather than a multi-tool. It's like a Swiss Army knife. Yeah. And the dog should not know what tool is going to come out of the Swiss Army knife today. Everybody loves the Swiss Army knife or the Leatherman, and You know, we get good feelings with it. But, you know, if I stab you a couple times with my Swiss Army knife, or, you know, when with the Leatherman, with the pliers, I start pulling your nails out, you know, you'll get different associations when I pull my Leatherman out. You know, you see? And so that's the same thing with this. It's what associations do we give the dog with the tools that we have? And again, the attitude that people have when we are trying to use tools is the thing to dominate and to control, where we should shift our mind to education and to make sure that the dog has neutral associations with the tool, but positive associations with the one who uses it. Yeah, and negative associations with the one who's using it. Yeah, because you are the one who corrects the dog, not the tool. You're the one that gives the dog a good feeling. Yeah, because one of the problems that many people have is when they start using a collar, and the first thing they do is they use this collar, they put it on the dog knows there's the collar on the neck, and then they get this first correction, they say, oh, motherfucker, I don't like this thing. You know, and then their doggy is awesomely behaved as soon as this thing come out. And then this thing comes out because you forgot it, you know, it's still with the neighbors. And now you're going to walk your dog with this thing, and now the dog says, hey, this is the party collar. Yeah, this collar does not hurt. This collar hurts like a motherfucker. This collar is my party collar. And so now the dog has actually negative associations with this collar and party associations with that collar. And you on the back, for him, are meaningless, because it's not you who controls the behavior. It's the tool that controls the behavior. And that is a big problem. Yeah. When I walk with my dogs know that I control their behavior, not the tools. Yeah, I control the pleasure from the ball, not the ball itself. The ball by itself, and that is where my two-ball game comes in. If you don't know what my two-ball game is, you know, watch my videos. Is without me, this is a very boring toy. The only thing that you can do it is carry it and run it around. You can't chase it yourself. You can't dig for it yourself. You can't play tug of war with it yourself. It's a very boring toy. So I add value. I am the game. Yeah? The same thing with my stick. You know? I give the good feeling and I give the negative feeling. The same with my collar. You know? The collar's neutral. I'm the one that says nope. And then, ooh, after no, this guy said no, and then I get a little fuzzy feeling. You know, I say good boy and I pet him. That's me. Yeah? So one of the big risk factors is that with tools like this, with training aids, is that the associations that are formed are with the tool and not with the use of the tool. And so what we tried to accomplish is that, you know, in our relationship-based training, is that the dog works for us and not for what I want to give him, or not for, and what I want to give him can be something positive or negative. I can give him a beating, or I can give him a cookie, or I can give him a ball. But I don't want the dog to work for bribes, nor do I want the dog to work out of fear of what the tool is going to do to him. Does that make sense? He should not be afraid of the tool. What he should worry about is the consequences that he gets from you after doing a faulty behavior. Yeah. So if the dog eventually becomes afraid of you because of what you might do with him, then you're a dick. Because then you're a tyrant. Then you are a dictator. Yeah. Whenever a dog gets a negative consequence, a aversive consequence, the dog should expect it. If the dog did not expect an aversive consequence, the application of that consequence is wrong. Yeah? Because it can never be a surprise for a dog to be controlled for rules, boundaries, and limitations and criteria that I have set. If the dog is surprised by that, then your definition of your training criteria has not set with clarity, and your rules, boundaries, and limitations have probably not been consistent, or they are just not clear. So in that particular case, we should go back to the drawing board and start teaching. Yeah. So whenever we have a punishment that we give to the dog, yeah, or an aversive consequence, and your dog is like surprised that he got it, then look in the mirror and say, "Dick," and then eventually you start feeling better. It's like, well, maybe I shouldn't, call myself Dick all the time. Maybe I should be a little bit more patient and give the dog the benefit of the doubt. Are you watching comments there?
Yeah, I'm just keeping an eye on the chat.
Great.
So Mary Brown actually would like you to demo the hitting the nuts part again.
The hitting the nuts part, yes, Mary. You get a kick out of that one. Oh. So that is important, yeah. So it's important that the dog expects a good feeling, the reward, if we set the criteria right, yeah, and the dog expects the aversive if we set the criteria right. Every time he gets surprised by either a positive reinforcement or a negative reinforcement, we have done our training job very wrong. It's like the dog jumps up on you and then you pet him. It's like, oh, I thought jumping up upon people wasn't allowed, and then it's like surprised, like, oh my God, I guess it's good, Then he barks at the door sometimes, and then he stops and comes to you, and then he gets petted. I said, oh my God, look at him. If I bark at the door and then go to my owner, it's awesome. Let's bark a little bit more, If the dog puts his paw on the table and you whack it on the head, it's like, hey, motherfucker, what the hell? It's just I put the dog paw on the table. I said, I had no idea that I can put my feet on the table. So if you haven't taught the dog that putting a feet on the table is improper and you immediately punish for him, you go to the back room mirror and say, Dick. And that's what we need to do. So it is very, very, very difficult that with the implementation of training tools, that we're consistent and that the dog is not surprised by any consequence, whether it is positive or negative, but that the dog expects that consequence. Yeah. So if we can't even do it with a clicker, if we can't even do it with food, then we should absolutely stay away from anything like this, because we're going to make our lives way too complicated. And that's why in my system, I start teaching people, to walk backwards and just use food. I mean, you can throw that tree to the dog's head as hard as you can. You're never going to bust his skull in. So, it's a kind of a safety margin. So if we don't have the skill to communicate properly with a clicker, and be consistent in our timing, if we can't see that, hey, these are the criteria that I've set, and I want to mark those with a clicker, I want to communicate that, hey, you met my criteria, you get a reward. You didn't met my criteria, you don't get a reward. That there's positives and negatives in there. It's either I get food, I don't get food. I turn my back to you, or I open myself up to you. Those are already negative consequences. So if we can do that properly, then we should absolutely shy away from using any tool, because we add so much complexity to it. Yes, sir?
So you use the clicker as an attention getter, not
No.
just exclusively for come eat?
No. So the clicker is used as a reinforcer that the behavior that you've done is correct. So we use the clicker as a secondary reinforcer. Also, I'll explain that one more time. So within dogs, we have something that is called a primary reinforcer. Yeah, and that is food. The reason why we call it a primary reinforcer is because we don't need to teach the dog to be hungry. We don't need to teach the dog to eat. The dog will eat when he's hungry. So the reinforcer for him is to still his hunger. Yeah. The secondary reinforcer the click, what we're going to do is we're going to make that secondary reinforcer first, and then the primary reinforcer is coming. Yeah? And so basically what we're saying is every time you hear this click, food is coming. Yeah? Every time you hear the click, food is coming. So we create these associations that click means what? Food is coming. So if we ask from our dog a behavioral response of sit, this is what we ask. Yeah? So my dog, and I'm going to call this A. Yeah? So the response is A means sit. So my dog responds, and he does A. What do? I give a primary reinforcer, a secondary reinforcer of click, and then I give him his primary reinforcer of food. Yeah? Does that make sense? So now if my dog would have done B, which is whatever else he does, but it's not a sit, what am I doing? I don't give him anything. And now the dog needs to figure it out. Oh shit, B wasn't working. C is not working. Let's try A again. Oh, that's fine. Click. And now I get food. Yeah? So the clicker is part of your communication system. It's not an attention getter at all. So it's a response after the dog does a behavior. So when my dog does a behavior that I want, if my dog does a behavior that I like, whatever behavior it is, you know, he comes to you, he sits in front of you, click, I like that. You know, he goes to his bed and lays down, click, I'm gonna go give him some food. Everything he likes, I can now reinforce. Yeah, so every time my dog does something nice, whatever I want, and he can, you know, execute 1,000 behaviors that he likes, I now have a way of communicating to him that, hey man, what you just done is awesome. Boom, the reinforcer is coming. Yeah, it's not there to, hey, I want to get your attention. Yeah, it's to tell him that he's doing something you want him to do, or you tell him something that what he's doing is a very reinforcing behavior. So whenever you deprive him from that secondary reinforcer, if he doesn't hear that click, he's on the counter. Here's Dad's beer. That's a problem. Why? Because that beer is reinforcing for him. Does that make sense? So he's not going to wait for the click because that particular action was very reinforcing for him. He says, oh my God. So, oh my God, here, food. Dad's beer. Very reinforcing. What's the problem with this training scenario? You should go back to the bathroom, dick, and maybe put your beer a little higher. You know, it's not like when you have a toddler or 2-year-olds, you're not going to put like electrical wires. You actually toddler-proof your house. You should puppy-proof your house. You should dog-proof your house. If you leave the steak, a tri-tip, I have done that. You know, if you leave your tri-tip on the counter, it's a dog. The dog likes to eat, and you're going to take a crap, and then you come back into your living room. This happened. This is a true story. And then you see the dog that has taken the entire tri-tip and shared it with his 2 other pack mates, and then they're like, 3 dogs. Yeah, go back to the bathroom and say, Dick, you forgot it. Don't be mad at the dogs. And so the problem with that is that particular behavior at that particular moment was very reinforcing for them because we had a primary reinforcer that was food. If we have a primary reinforcer of chasing a squirrel and your dog bolts out of the door and then he is actually able to chase the squirrel, well, maybe you shouldn't have closed the door, you know, and then, but you know, my dog can see the squirrel. I want him to stop chasing the squirrel while I want you to stop fucking sneezing. You know, and then it said, how can I stop the dog from chasing the squirrel? Okay, let me do something. Window. Window gone. My dog cannot see the squirrel. Oh, but now I can't see through the window. Well, that's your fucking problem then, not your dog's problem. So we can do two things. We can either correct the snot out of the dog to do it, or we can try to set up a training environment that is suitable, that we can actually train him not to respond to stuff. So if I first take the like, how do you say that, the temptation away, then now I can create control, and then I can build it up. You see? So we can do two things, and that's what training is all about. It's like, you know, thinking outside the box a little bit, and how can I set my dog up for success? And this now becomes a training tool. Your cardboard. Like people always said, oh my God, my dog scratches my $19,000 door. Well, go to the freaking bathroom mirror, say, Dick, you know, and tell him, it's like, you're the one put the $19,000 door in there and you just got a puppy. I said, like, what were you thinking? You know, or grab a piece of cardboard and then put that as a protective measure onto the door until you have taught your dog that scratching the door isn't a good idea. But don't go yanking and cranking that dog for the first scratch he does, because that's, you know, go to the bathroom again. That is not appropriate. However, that is how people think, and that is how people train, because it's their door, and the dog, you know, as soon as their 10-week-old puppy comes into the house, should know not to scratch the $19,000 oak, maple, whatever door you have. And that, for me, is absolutely wrong thinking. Yeah, and that is also why I don't teach these training tools, because they're used to be dominating tools, not training or communication tools. You see what I'm saying? And now your cardboard does what? Now cardboard can actually prevent you from being a dick and focusing on what needs to happen, and that is educating your dog that scratching on the door is not reinforcing. But being with you in the kitchen and sitting there is actually is, because that's where he gets his food. You see where I'm going? Yeah.
How do you get him to quit scratching on the door or quit doing
You don't interact with him.
Put cardboard on your door.
Or plywood or whatever.
What's going to happen? So there goes your new carpet now.
2 hours later, another dog comes and finally starts interacting with you. It's like, yeah, good puppy. Or I can contain my dog by putting a little fence in so he cannot go to the door. Probably a better idea. So I use these room dividers all the time, those X-pens. Yeah, an X-pen is a great training tool to prevent your dog. Let me I'm gonna it's my house. It's my house. Got some rooms here. So if I sit here, and my front door's here, and I got windows here, and I sit watch TV, and this here is about 90 feet, my living room, there in my house. That's a big fucking long distance to go grab him. I just put a little gate here. As this is my kitchen. Well, and I got steak in here and my dinner's cooking. What can I do now? I open the little gate. My dog is here. I have control. I go back. My dog can't follow me. He can't jump on the counter. Oh, my dog gets a little older. I'm going to teach him counter surfing. I'm going to gate it off. I don't want to chase my dog all the way to the house in the bathroom, and then he goes outside, and then this is what happens. We don't want to have that. No. Little baby gate. There we go. Now my dog gets bigger. So first my baby gate was this high, then my baby gate's that high, and my baby gate's that high. You know, and then people say, oh my God, right, really? Yeah, really. You should see all the stuff that I have. And then people say, oh my God, your dogs are so behaved. Yeah, I went through a lot of baby gates. And then what happens is we have the 1-year-old, yeah? The 1-year-old, 85-pound big little guy that says, you know what, I can actually, if I put muscle in it, the wood of the baby gate, because I bought the fancy stuff, splits, the metal frame goes out, and I can run right through it. Happened. Yeah, happened with me. So is that the problem of the dog, or is it the problem of the rigidity of the training gate? I think the latter. So what did I do? Well, we need to reinforce that training gate a little bit. See the thinking? And the reason why is I need to teach my dog what to do and what not to do.
So how does you reinforce the training gate?
I buy a bigger one.
So where do you get these? Because baby gates aren't that big.
Amazon. Oh, they're actually training gates for dogs.
Okay.
Yeah. If you want the really, really, really tough ones, you go to Rhino Pens.
Rhino pets?
Rhino Pen.
Okay.
They make things for lion cubs. They're a zoo provider. For some dogs, you need that stuff. It's not your little Walmart stuff that's gonna, be strong enough for Bronco over there, because it's made for the 8-pound Chihuahua and not the 100-pound drivey working German Shepherd. So, there's companies out there that that make stuff for working dogs. So, Petco, however, does sell a really good training gate. I think it's like $400 or $500, and it's fancy. It looks fancy. It's actually made from nice metal. The wood's nice. I broke 2 of them already, but they last me a season. They last me a season, a training season. So baby gates are an incredible tool to contain the dog. So if you look at my puppy video, how to be successful raising a puppy, one of the things that I always say is never leave your puppy unattended. Yeah? If you cannot look at your puppy 24/7, your puppy should never be loose in the house. It would always contained in an X-pen. So I just put my X-pen in there and my pup can't do anything. Oh, but I have carpet. Well, let's fix that. Buy some, whatever this is, vinyl, put it on your carpet, put the X-pen on there. Your dog cannot piss on the carpet anymore, and you can't rip the carpet out. And that's what I do. Or, I have those laminate boards in the corner over there, and then I'll make a little square of laminate on my carpet, and I put my X-pen on there, and that is what I do. So I do use a lot of tools to train. And again, the intent there is not to contain my dog. It is not to dominate my dog or restrict his, although I'm restricting his space, that is not my intent. My intent is to prevent my dog getting in trouble so I can train him to do the right stuff. And that is where, when you look in my canine relationship performance pyramid, that is where the attitude comes in. It's trying to, my ATKI principle. So, I have this acronym in my training system, and the A stands for attitude. And for me, that's the biggest problem with most people, is to change their attitude from dominating to teaching. And that's why my system is called From Tyrant to Teacher, from trying to control to educate. It is our responsibility to educate the dog, but and that's where it's training. It's our responsibility to train. And then when people think this, they think about dog training. This entire list has got nothing to do with dogs. This is all about training the human. Learn to ride, Bart. Yeah? So it's creating our attitude, and it's training us to do things differently. And then we have knowledge. Like, in order for us to use the tools correctly, we need to start with an attitude of teaching. Then we need to train ourselves to maintain that attitude no matter how stressful the situation is. But we then also need to invest in how to use this. You know, the knowledge about, you know, how is this created? What was the intent? You know, and then and only then I draw a line. Now let's start talking about equipment. You know, how do I use my X pen? How do I use this box? Or one of my favorite boxes to train with. I'll just grab one. I will not drop it on your head, ma'am. This is one of my favorite training tools, is this simple wooden box. This wooden box can do a lot for my dogs. Dogs can stand on it, can step on it. Dogs can sit in it. Dogs can learn to eat in it. I use it for detection training. I use it for anxiety training. I used to, you know, I put all these boxes together, and I teach dogs to actually work over obstacles. There's a lot of stuff that I can do with boxes, you know. But again, it's like when I have a box like this and I don't know what I'm going to do with the box, then this is an awful training tool. You know, I can grab the lid and smack it on somebody's head and say, hey, this is your bad doggy, and I start beating it. Well, this is also a use of the box, you know. I could use it as a little crapper box. You know, there's a lot of stuff that I can do with the box, but it is, you know, use your imagination. However, I need to be educated in how to use the box. Yeah. So, and I see a lot of people again using tools. They have seen it. They have seen it on TV. You know, as seen on TV. And then they use the tool as seen on TV, and they say, oh, the shit breaks immediately. It's because you use it wrong, you know? The little, I don't know, sometimes they use these battery operated drills, you know, as seen on TV. It's not to use. It's to look at. Because they're worth crap. So if you're actually going to use it, you're using it wrong. You know, so bad jokes. But yeah, whenever we see this, and this is a problem with these tools, yeah, with all these things, is like a gazillion people uses these things, and then you see somebody in a dog park, and he does the like start your lawnmower kind of action, and the dog's like, what the fuck? And then start like walking like this next to the owner. It's like, oh my God, I want that. He's so behaved. The dog shits his pants. It's like you want somebody who's afraid of you. But that's the problem, yeah? And that's why we start using it. And then we said, oh my God, like this is the thing, you know, or we have the e-collars, and we see somebody like frying the dog, and now the dog is like, oh my God, I'm going to stay here. I'm not going to go anywhere, you know, and then everybody says, oh, I'm going to use the e-collar. It's also a communication tool. If you don't know how to use the e-collar, you should stay away from it, you know. You know, they... like acupuncture, you know, they use these TENS units. What is it? Yeah, they use these like electrostimulating the muscle,
yeah, sometimes, yeah.
you know, for recovery physiotherapy. You know, you see the professional athletes, and, you know, they use these things. Well, if you put that in your tongue and then one in your asshole, you can actually give yourself a cardiac arrest. I can kill you with a TENS unit. It's low voltage but pretty high current that goes through it, and then the intent was to use it as a muscle stimulator, but now I actually use it as a torture device. You see where I'm going? Any tool that you can use, you know, with a whisk. Oh my God, a whisk. If I wrap a whisk into your hair and then start yanking it as a lawnmower, it's not going to be a pleasant feeling, you see? I can do awful things with a whisk. And my thing is, to go back to my lecture, is like when we think about tools, we need to really study what they are designed for. And then my last thing is experience, yeah? it takes a lot of experience to actually use all these tools really well. It takes a lot of experience to, where is my little, yeah, it takes a lot of experience to use a stick like this. If you can't even hold a leash correctly, how are you going to hold a leash correctly and a stick and your clicker and your toy and your ball? You know, how are you going to do this? It's awful. Yeah? So it takes a lot of experience to do that. So one of the other things that I like to use, you know, is these touch pads. I use these all the time. The reason why I use touch pads is for several reasons, but my primary reason is to teach the dog that after engagement phase, that it's, and if you follow my system, you know, the first couple weeks, months, we do everything backwards. Yeah? So we teach the dog to stay with us. You need to stay with me to get things done. You need to be engaged with me to get a great life. If I would do this the entire life of my dog, I'm not going to be very successful, because my dog might end up with a lot of separation anxiety. I don't say that is going to happen, but eventually that the dog will not be able to work with you. So I need to have a way to teach the dog that running away from me is also a good idea. Hence my 2-ball game. You know, running away from me gives you joy. But the touch pads, I like to train touch pads. I like to train my very young puppies that it's okay to run from me to there and to wait. And then I'll come there and actually pet him, and then I walk away from him, and it's okay to wait. So I use this like big physical object to teach my pups confidence that engaging with me is great, but it's also good to walk away from me and wait somewhere. Yeah, that is great for teaching a dog to go to his place, you know, to his bed. Because what is that doing? You're sitting near a couch, you say, go to your place, and the dog is like, okay, I'm comfortable with that. So when I do this with a puppy, I use these touch boards. The other thing why I use this, you see this a little bit flexible? So when a dog puts his weight on it and he's learned to sit on it, the ground is actually unstable. It wobbles a little bit. And that is creating a lot of confidence. You know, when we have solid ground, we are normally more comfortable. But once we start walking on a little bit wobbly board, we're like, I don't know about this. So all these different surfaces, again, the reason why I use this is to create more confidence in the dog by providing a different kind of surface. You know, I have these Bosu balls that I use. They're the half balls with a plastic platform. You know, people use it in the gym a lot. I teach my dogs to balance those balls. You know, it creates a lot of confidence. I use if you look in my Facebook group, there's videos about my touch boards. You know, I use a lot of touch boards. Let me grab one here. Sorry for the noise, Facebook. So I use a lot of touch boards, but again, a lot of people see videos, bless you, a lot of people see videos about touch boards, and they say, oh, I've seen this in a class, and they don't know why to use it for, you know, and so touch boards are great to teach positions, to teach stays, to build a familiar place. This is also a visual cue. Your touch board is a visual cue that says, hey, I know what to do on a touch board. Yeah? That touch board, if I develop some calm behavior, say like a down stay on the touch board, and my dog is very confident on the touch board. Yeah? So I have a dog with pre-existing anxiety a little bit, and I work with him, and he's fine on the touch board. That touch board gives him a lot of peace. Now I can take this touch board, I can go to the Walmart parking lot, I can put that touch board on the ground, and now he looks in his environment like, oh, holy shit, where am I? Oh my God, I know this. This is my touch board. And the dog stands on the touch board, and he might not go in it down, but he might feel a little bit more secure because it's his touch board. And then the next time, I have other touch boards under there. They're a little bit smaller, and they're a little bit smaller, and they're a little bit smaller. And then eventually I can fade the touch board out, and now I have a dog that is happy-go-lucky wherever I take him without the touch board. Yeah?
Couldn't you do the same thing with blanket or something?
Yeah, you could. Yeah. I like.
Something that's meaningless, but they're familiar.
Yeah. The nice thing about this is if a dog starts spinning it and rolling himself in the blanket, this is not moving. You know, and the blanket gets wet. And but yeah, you can do it with anything. You can do it with a piece of carpet. You can do it with a stall mat. You can do it. I mean, buy this cheap ass staple in IKEA and use that. So use whatever it is. So any tool for me is usable. The issue with it again is, you know, learning how to use it. And why would we use the blanket? You know, to smother the dog, to make it warm, or like I said, to create a safe space. We can do a lot of stuff. But you know, my message from today is when I talk about tools is, you know, we need to start thinking about what do I want to teach the dog with this tool, rather than how do I want to control the dog with this tool. Yeah, and that is very difficult. You know, the same, you know, with with stuff like that is like, you know, I can use it as a drinking bowl, but I can also use it as a platform. And that is what, for me, what great dog training is all about, is the ability to analyze what we are doing with a particular tool, and then with tools that are designed for dog training, is understanding what their true design and function actually is, and then educate ourselves in the proper use of that tool. And that's where I go back to my saying I've said a couple times in this lecture, is dog training is both a science and a mechanical skill. And I was not the one who invented it. My mentor, Bob Bailey, actually taught me that one. And animal behavior is a mechanical skill, you know. If you train with dolphins, you need to be really good in throwing your sardines. And I mean, everything is a mechanical skill. Even using a clicker is very difficult. So again, thinking about the tools and their proper use is good. So in my Facebook group and in my members only section at the ISDC site, I have several videos in how to use some of the tools. You know, I have a video in how to use the touch boards. I have videos on how to use the raised touch boards and how, you know, what can we do with them. I use the raised touch boards for position transitions, for instance, to teach the dog to sit down and stand and transition between those three positions. And I also teach the dogs to stay. I also teach the dogs to run and go jump on something and wait for me. So I do that all with those raised touch boards. The reason why it's raised is so I'm not dominating the dog. If I have this one, and now I need to reward my dog, see the difference? When it's raised, and now I need to reward my dog, his head's going to be here. Now I can stay upright, I can stay neutral. Rather than...
Would it be the same if you went to the floor with the dog?
No. If I would train like this, then this would be a lot easier. If I sit on my knees, this would not a lot easier. However, in public, I'm not walking around like that. I mean, some people might do it.
Well, no, I meant rather than elevating them, the real purpose here is it's not important that the dog be raised, it's the level of your eye-to-eye and personal contact.
That is part of the thing. But the other thing is that I want to give him a visual presentation of my body that he will always see in real life. This is how he sees me. And the first thing that I want to do is, like, I want to be as consistent in my body language as I can. Like I said, I don't go shopping like this. So if I stand up and I teach him that this is what I do, this is how I use my body, I stand up, and this is what I give. By starting elevated, I can teach him that my reach is not dominant. So if I start elevated and then put him on a lower platform, now I can say him that, hey, this is the same movement, this is the same body language, and I'm not dominating to you. Does that make sense? So
yeah, and then also he's more focused on task when it's been kind of brought to his attention immediately.
yeah, by using
else to do.
exactly. So by using physical objects, I can increase my dog's focus a little bit, and by having him elevated, I can increase my dog's focus towards me, and he's more likely to stay on an elevated thing because he needs to jump off rather than on the floor where he can creep. Yeah, there's a physical barrier between moving forward and backwards. I mean, he knows when he's jumped off the board, and then if I tell him, hey, if you come off that board, there's no reinforcement. If you walk away from the dog and you have your back turned to the dog and your dog creeps a little bit, you probably won't even see it. If you want to train very long stays, down stays for 100 yards, 200 yards, you know that your dog is off the board. You know that your dog is off the little carpet square. If you put him in a grass and he moved 3 feet, that's probably hard to see unless you paint a line that you can see that he crawled over it. But for that, the dog knows that he moved because they're different in texture, there's a different in elevation. The dog knows that the behavior of moving is not okay. So that way I can help him learn these skills a lot better. And of course, eventually we get away from the boxes because you're not going to go into your favorite restaurant with your elevated touchboard says, you know what, I have my service dog, I'm going to build my little box here and he's going to stay there, it's going to be fantastic. Yeah, we're not doing this. So eventually we're fading out all these things. Yeah, but again, it's like using all these tools as a training aid to get more clarity in what it is what we need to convey in our teaching. Yeah, and once we're very methodical and we're very strategic about the implementation of the tools, we can increase the clarity in our teaching by a lot. And that way we can decrease the time things take to make clear to the dog. We decrease the total education time. And it all starts again with the attitude from, stop using these tools as a control measure, stop using these tools as a dominating measure, but try to see the teaching value of the tool, and then study why these, why would I use these 2 leashes? What's the difference? Well, it's position, yeah. It's distance. Say again.
It's just the line.
Yeah, but I mean, I can't. If I start my engine with this leash, I'm literally lifting my dog 3 feet off the ground. You see, so the way I'm going to use this leash is completely different. Yeah, I can't yank on it as much. So again, it's like thinking about a leash like this. It's like, oh, I see Mr. Johnny, police officer. He's got this little tab, and yeah, I want one because it's tactical. It's really tactical to have this like little leash on my dog, and then if you don't know what the fuck you're doing with this leash, I mean, it's useless. I always laugh. I want to get my personal muzzle, because a muzzle is a tool. So, you see my dog, and my dog shows his teeth. I've got many pictures and videos of my dog using his teeth. And then people are like, oh my God, they're so scared of the dog because the dog uses his teeth. And then people see my dog in a muzzle. And for some reason, when they see my dog in the muzzle, they become a little bit more at ease. Because they have no fucking idea what this muzzle is. This is a fighting muzzle. This is a stainless steel reinforced skull crusher. The use of this tool is to have my dog run as fast as he can, grab his head, bounce it in your face, and kill you. That is why we have these muzzles. So if I do not understand that this is a fighting muzzle, I have a little problem, you see, and as again, it's not understanding the tools and why it is for. You know, it always makes me laugh when my vets said, you know, I want you to muzzle your dog. And I said, well, you know, this is the only muzzle I have. It's fine, I'll be perfectly safe. I said, no, the reason why you're safe is that my dog does not initiate any fight with you because he'll bash your freaking head in. Because that's what we teach the dogs to do. Or we teach him to hit you in the sternum and literally take all your breath away, and then you fall on your back, and now the dog is, you know, a couple times breaking your nose with it. See, this is a stainless steel reinforced.
Trained to do that?
Yes, I trained to do that. Yeah.
So, when would they do that?
This is for police work, man.
Okay.
This personal protection. You don't have a bite injury, so there's less blood. That's a joke. Yeah.
We did.
But it's a more effective way of fighting. Yeah. And the other thing, yeah.
Oh no, so just Jessica had a question about the last thing with the tools, like the touch boards and stuff.
Yes.
Which was, are we supposed to be using verbal commands as we're practicing these movements with the tools?
So, a good question. Are we supposed to use verbal commands when we use these tools? No and yes. It depends on where you are in your stage of training. I have a video in our Facebook group that talks about the transition from luring to visual cues to audible cues. And we need to be very smart about it. In the beginning, we're going to do everything with our mouth shut and just use luring techniques. Then we're going to fade out the luring and we're going to start implementing visual cues. And then when my dog can do all the behavior, when I can ask my dog to do anything with my body, then and only then I'm going to start using my voice. Yeah. So the implementation of audible commands comes absolutely later. Yeah. And with some dogs that is a year, with some dogs it's 2 years, with some dogs it's 6 months. But in the beginning, I do not talk to my dogs. Everything that I do is with my body. And the reason why I do this is, and I talked about this in my From Tyrant to Teacher video, is that the concept of learned irrelevance. Learned irrelevance is something that is a big problem in dog training. And if I would run my mouth all the time and my dog hears certain, here's our English, and there is no consequence to that English, there's no consequence to that noise, there's no meaning to the noise, the dog is going to associate your voice with radio noise. And he said, well, whatever comes out of my dad's mouth is irrelevant because we run our mouths all the time. If you say, oh my God, little fighter, you are such an amazing little boy. What a good sit of yours. Oh my God. Oh, you want a cookie? Huh? Oh, are you hungry, buddy? Dog's like, what the fuck is this woman all saying? The only thing he hears is that you squeak like a little puppy and his tail is going. And he, when his tail is wagging really fast, the tail actually says, I have no fucking idea what you're talking about, man. I have really no fucking idea. Really, because people think the dog is happy because the tail wags 100 miles per hour, but the dog is confused as snot out of him. And the dog is like, you know what? And he puts his ear pods in and listen to Bog. And he's like, and then you keep talking and the dog is in complete peace. Because he now doesn't hear you. He has tuned you out. And dogs are really good with that. It's like you putting your noise cancellation headphones in. That's what the dog does all the time. And there you go, still go, oh my God, look at you, your happy face. You're smiling. and the dog has learned to absolutely ignore your voice. So we need to be very careful, in what to do. Is there a time for baby talk? Absolutely. Is there a time for audible communication? Absolutely. I use that all the time, but we need to, again, be very smart about it so that we don't ruin our chances. Hey! Oh, you see, everybody shat their little pants. Yeah, and the reason why that happened is now my voice was a little bit louder, and that's what we do to the dogs, because eventually we start yelling at the dog, and the dog is like, you said sit, but the dog's like that. It's like, motherfucker, is this like the big one? Is this it? Oh, no, cabinet's still standing. Must be dad. And then you say, good boy. Even though you meant sit, he's down, but you didn't give a shit because your training criteria doesn't matter too much. And then you still reinforce it. You know what you reinforced? That he should be scared of you. It's like, fuck. That crazy motherfucker. Every time he raises his voice, the one thing that I'm going to do is like, I'm going to make myself really small, go down, be quiet, don't do anything. Yeah? And then my life's going to be okay. Okay. And then we have a problem, yeah? Because you know what the dogs eventually are going to do is stop showing you natural behaviors. They say, you know what? I don't trust that son of a bitch. He can like be nice and then he's gonna yell, so what I'm gonna do is like just give up a little bit. I'm just gonna lay in my little pillow, and that's what I do. I kind of give up. That's sad. And that's why it's so important not to talk in the beginning, because that's what we do. We as humans, if we want to get shit done with our dogs, eventually we start raising our voices. And now the dog is like, okay, whenever he's in that mode, if I just be calm and cool, eventually he's going to come up and give me a little pat on the head, or he goes in his pocket and give me a little cookie, or he say, okay, good boy. Okay, let's go outside. I feel really bad for what I did, and I'm going to throw you a ball. Okay, I don't really want to have the ball. I'm just going to go there. And that's what we do. Yeah. So that's why, again, watch the video. Transition from luring to visual cues to audible cues. It's about a 45-minute video. I explain you how to do it, why to do it. It's in our group. Mary, can you check if we have any other questions?
Just Mary saying that the phyto muzzle is really new to her.
It's very neat.
It's very new.
Mm-hmm.
She never heard of it. She didn't know that dogs were trained to do that.
Yes, yeah. Dogs have in dog sports we've been using it for many years, decades and decades. Started in the 20s. So that's it.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So David, yes, a question.
Old professors from the 70s moved from numb to confused. Just asking for correction. What I think I'm piecing together is the power of your body, your motion, and reward. So I think it would be smart when I get home. I have a dog vest with a clicker in the treats.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like trick or treat. If I notice a good behavior that was solicited or unsolicited,
Mm-hmm.
I click and reward so that the dog catches this action is good.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't sound like when the dog's doing something that you don't want it to do, that there's anything you can really do to correct it at that time except ignore it.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Or gently use the stick when necessary.
Well, we're not going to use a stick. I'm not going to allow anybody to use a stick. I just give this as an example.
It's got my one and only pair of glasses, and I have to work tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not
Well, then I
doing
would start trading it. I would just go to the dog and here's like you want a glass or you want a piece of steak? I want a piece of steak.
That's what I've been doing,
That's what
yeah.
you-
Yeah.
So you outsmart the dog.
Yeah.
So don't take
It's-
it. Yeah, because I think one of the things I'm confused with, sometimes you think she knows what I'm saying, but she says,
But she doesn't.
Fuck you.
But she doesn't, and that is the problem that we have as people. Is we assume that the dog knows what I'm saying, but they don't.
Or know
They-
they
they-
were wrong when they don't.
But well, and that's also they don't know that they're wrong. Is they give you the sad puppy eye, and the reason why is because they're afraid of what you're going to do, because your energy is changing because of an action that they don't understand, and that's all avoidance. That is not the dog saying, "Hey, I know I was wrong," and that's a big problem.
So one of the things we're not doing enough is the reward with the physical treat, the
Mhm.
quicker treat.
Yeah, and the pet, yeah, absolutely. Okay, David, anything you picked up from this lecture? Anything you want to say about this lecture?
I think one of the big things was just the idea of making the tool neutral.
Yes.
And I can tell, like with Buddy or even Baloo, when I can walk out and that prong collar, if I just pick it up, they just let their eyes go big and they're like, okay, we get to go.
Yes.
And it's so I've been trying to use these different things, and I'll take them up and then I'll go set them somewhere, like we
Great.
did in the other other session. And so I'm trying to get it so I'll get his leash out, but I won't just hook him up and take him out, because they immediately that's what they want to do. They want to go play.
Exactly.
And so trying a little bit more to make that neutrality thing a little bit.
And then because it has been conditioned already in the past, and so there's been more reinforcement and conditioning going on, that the collar means anything compared to the collar doesn't mean anything. It might take a little bit longer. So the only thing you need to do is be consistent in adding randomness into that collar, and then neutrality will be the result. Okay, what do you think about the lecture? Was okay?
Very good.
Good. Yeah. Any more other questions, sir?
No, I'm still processing.
Brenda?
Lecture was excellent. I had a situation this week, and I'm not really sure how I could have avoided this.
Mhm.
With the leash, of course.
Yep.
Taking the dog out to go potty after dark,
Mhm.
dark out. And she obviously got excited or something she saw, so she darted, and we live on a hill. And she darted, and I'm holding the leash. Before I know it, I'm flat on the
You're
ground.
flat on the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you
That is
avoid
hard.
something like that happen?
That is hard. Yeah, that is hard. I mean, it's either we're strong, or I let the dog go,
As
or
Rick said, I should have just let go. I'm
if
afraid
it's
to
a
stop running off.
yeah, it's a dangerous situation. I would always suggest having a hold on the leash. One of the things that can help is then having a longer line, so you can feed a little bit of line and then slow the dog down like that.
With this dog, you're giving her more momentum.
I know.
Yeah, okay.
She's like
So once we but like once the dog is not fully trained, then we might run into these situations. It's like try prevent it as much as we can, but we want to go to a situation, and that's where my homework comes in. The exercises that I give you is to get as much engagement and calm mind as possible, so we can go and teach her walking on a leash as fast as we can, because that's the first skill that we teach the dog all the time, because that's the most it's not just the sit stay, but walking on the leash is the first thing that we want to teach the dog. But first we need to make sure the foundation is right, and that there's no negative associations in the relationship with you or the environment. Yeah, good. Mary?
It's just a good, I mean, I know what a leash is for, but it's good to have that reminder, oh yeah, every time I put anything on my dog,
Mm-hmm.
just check in again about, which tool am I using, what does it do, why am I using it for this situation, and to just bring it to the forefront of your thought process,
Mm-hmm.
so that you're really conscious of it. Because I mean, I put a collar on the dog, and like I'm not always thinking about like which collar am I using. Like, I mean, I have my collars for different things, but I'm not always explicitly kind of checking in with myself about like, yeah, what am I using today? And I would never do that, with like my hand tools at home, or like I'm very conscious of what I'm doing. So
Mm-hmm.
I think it's easy to not to forget that. Oh yeah, no,
Yes.
these are communication tools, and we need to make sure we're using
Mm-hmm.
the right one.
Good. Did you enjoy the lecture?
Yeah.
Good. Ma'am, any questions? Anything you want to share?
The lecture was awesome. I learned a lot, as always. Didn't realize, all the different uses of the different tools and the different collars. And unfortunately, starting out, we went to a trainer, and he got us on the pinch collar and said, "Oh, I take him for a walk. He doesn't. If he pulls, you yank him."
Yeah.
That was his.
That's
and
what most people
my
train.
poor dog had to go through that. We stopped doing that after a very short period of time. But I learned a lot of misinformation out there, and you're not properly trained on what to do. And so I learned a lot about all that, and also a lot about it's on me to control my environment more and his environment.
Yes.
And instead of me yelling at him for doing things wrong, there's things I should be preventing
Yes.
that I haven't been. So I'm
Yes.
learning a lot to just really be more aware of the environment and keeping things
Good.
so that he's learning and getting more positive reinforcement.
Mm-hmm. And then the one thing that I want to say for like people like you that have like, that have yanked the dog, it's like, just forget about it, never sweat it. I always say, when you do something stupid to your dog, think you're on I-5, open your window, throw it out of the window, let it hit by a Mack truck, and forget about it. It's fine, because if we start, if we're getting stuck in that negative thought, that is actually more damaging to the dog, that one mistake that you make. And the same with if you're like really good, don't go celebrating a party, because guess what, 5 seconds later the dog might have done something stupid that you've not seen. So it's like, try to stay in the moment and don't sweat the bad stuff. Just kind of go through it, and don't feel bad, but let's learn from it. So okay, good. So any more questions on Facebook here?
Nope, Mira just says excellent lecture as usual.
Okay, so thank you guys from watching on Facebook. If you do have any questions, leave me a comment below. I will answer all of them. And for you guys here, thank you for being here, and I will see you everybody in the next lecture. Okay, thank you. Bye bye.